Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show on which we explore the mystery of the human personality and the mystery of the human adventure, all through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner, your producer and co-host. So happy to have you here today, folks. Listen, today is a very, very special interview we have to bring to you with New York Times bestselling author John Eldridge, who is also a counselor and a teacher. He's president of Wild at Heart, which is also a title of one of his books that I'm sure you are familiar with if you haven't already read it multiple times. But we have a great conversation with John today. It's so rich, and he has a brand new book called Experience Jesus Really. The timing of his book and this conversation we felt was so significant that we really just did a deep dive into the book and the themes on the book, and we sort of pressed pause on the Enneagram. But this is an interview that you're going to want to listen to multiple times. It's super rich. So glad you're here. Dig into this one. I know you're going to love it. That's it for me, Anthony Skinner. And now, without any further ado, here is your host, Ian Crum.
Hey, Typology Tribe, Ian Morgan Cron here. Welcome back to the podcast on which we explore the mystery of the human personality and the human adventure through the lens of the Enneagram. Today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking a little bit less about Enneagram specific stuff in order to jump into our good friend John Eldridge's new book, Finding Refuge, Strength, and Wonder Through Everyday Encounters with God. No further ado, John, welcome to Typology.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good to be here. Honored to be on your podcast.
So, John, I'm really curious about this book because I've just finished a book that drops next month called The Fix. And the book is about the 12 steps and how they are a surprising path of transformation for the well-adjusted, the down and out, everyone in between. And this book speaks to something that's very dear to my heart, which is how our modern day addictions and preoccupations are preventing us from experiencing the fullness of God as we are intended to. Like, for example, in the book, you say, we are all becoming disciples of the internet, says Eldredge. We think information holds the keys to a better life, yet anxiety and loneliness are higher than ever. Address that for me for a moment. Address the idea of addiction and also just give us a précis of the book.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, right. Because you are a disciple of the system that tutors you on living. And for most of us, that makes us disciples of the internet. Like, what's the proper temperature to bake a potato? And, what's an Enneagram 8? And how do, you're trying to figure out life. We all go look it up, right? But what we don't realize is how much that has shaped our expectations, for one thing, like in our life with God, because the internet has taught us to expect immediate answers, right? I mean, you get 3 million results in 0.0003 seconds. There's no waiting. There's no formation, right, of the waiting process. You were talking about addiction. We're literally addicted to that process of, I can just go look it up. I can just go look it up. I can go look it up, right? And it's just hit all day long.
In the book, you talk about ordinary mystics, and you're singing my playbook when you do that. I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic schools, went to Catholic graduate school at Fordham, and so studying the mystics, Karl Rahner, Thomas Merton, Martin Laird, among others, right? Julian and Norwich, was just such a part of, it's like warping, it's like in my bones, in my blood. And what you're calling people to in this book is to follow the path of becoming an ordinary mystic. What do you mean by mystic? Because it scares the bejesus out of most evangelicals.
Exactly. People are going to freak out at that.
Yeah.
I wanted to title the book Ordinary Mystics, but we didn't because we knew that a lot of people, they would just not even open it up. But the invitation is very, very simple. We are meant to experience God.
Yes.
Every person. has the capacity, I call it our amphibious nature. Like you can enjoy coffee and dinner with your friends and a bicycle ride on the beach, but you also have a spiritual nature that you are meant to have actually very regular experiences of God. We've lost that because of, life in the postmodern era and internet discipleship and that sort of thing. So I'm inviting people back out of the obsession with what I want to call functional materialism. Just show me how it works. Give me the steps, that break it down to me. And it takes all the mystery and the wonder out of life and out of God. And so, the idea of ordinary mystics is come back to your created nature. You were meant to experience God.
Yes. It's so interesting. In the 12 steps, Bill W., who, as you know, wrote them, Bill said, he'll say something like, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, or turned our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him.
Yes.
And my sponsor often says his one critique of the steps is that he wished Bill had said, as we experienced him.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that, Ian. Exactly. Because that's what people are craving in the world right now. Mm-hmm. Right? We're desperate for that, to experience God, like simply to experience his love, mm-hmm. or to hear his voice answer you in your prayers. What should I do, Lord? To be able to hear him, to receive his comfort and that sort of thing. That's normal, folks. Like that, you go back and through the saints down through the ages. That was the normal Christian experience. It's only in recent, this recent era that we've really been stripped of it.
Yes, it's interesting. Recently I've been reading again, but I've read it 4 or 5 times in the last 30 years, and every time I read it, I feel like I'm reading a book I've never read before. It's like just so chock full of stuff. And that is Thomas R. Kelly's A Testament of Devotion.
I like the books you read, man.
Well, I mean, Kelly is amazing, right? But the thing that struck me this morning in my time of reading it was just his assault on this idea that God lives outside of us, that there's a subject-object relationship between us and God versus what Scripture, I think, teaches, and what the mystics certainly teach us, which is that the kingdom of God is within. That there is a particle of God in you that came as part of your equipment, right? And the goal of the spiritual life is to not achieve union with God, but to actually realize you already have it. What do you think of that idea?
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're gonna go. This interview is gonna go so fast. It's okay. We got to help people along here because you and I are a little bit older, and we've spent some years wondering about these things. So we got to help folks along. So the first thing I try and help people understand is that your soul is meant for union with God.
Yes.
You are a vessel for the Spirit of God to fill, right? The indwelling presence of God in us, okay? Which is eroded by fear and worry and anger and bitterness and, our addictions and frankly, the whole cellular, online internet life. It just erodes the experience of that, okay? It was Blaise Pascal, I think, who said, the primary problem with the human race is people just don't know how to be quiet in their own home, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've lost the communion element of life with God, of faith in God. So I love it that you're bringing that back up, that folks, there's a nourishment that is available. There is that the older saints would call it consolation, mm-hmm. right? It is the lovely presence of the living God within you. So this will change your prayer life. Like you're not praying to Jesus way beyond up there in the heavens somewhere, right? Christ is both with you, right? I think it was Tozer who called it mutual indwelling. He is both with us and in us, and we are with him and in him, right? But there's an intimacy that I'm just trying to help people recover.
Yes.
I can't tell you how many times as a worship leader, I've been told by the pastors, bring God as if I'm supposed to go up the mountain and grab him by the neck and bring him back down, and it makes me very uncomfortable.
When in reality, your job, right, is to create the natural environment in which people realize that God was here before they got here.
Exactly. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, oh no, my job is just to try and facilitate a spiritual awakening where people go, oh, God is here, in here, with me and in me.
Oh, okay. This is really good. So I want to go. Do you go by Tony or Anthony?
Anthony.
Okay, I'm going to go with Anthony's thought for a minute, because worship is one of the means by which we teach our soul to experience the presence of God. Right? In him you live and move and have your being. Like, it's not far away, folks. Mm-hmm. Okay. But we do need a retraining, right, Anthony? Like worship, like what would you describe the worship experience does to facilitate that?
Well, like Ian, I feel like my job is to set the table and to awaken hearts to his already nearness.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so again, I try and get super practical with all this. Folks, if you're wondering, where do I start? Find a couple of great worship songs that you really love, that work for you, because people are different in style and taste and tempo. And find a couple of worship songs that really draw you into the presence of God, make you aware of it, and linger with those for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Just linger.
I love the word linger.
Yeah.
And the reason I like it, though, but I also recognize the cultural challenges to lingering, right? Everything, it seems to me, I was thinking about this yesterday, that everything in the world today, and this is no different probably than other times, although the intensity seems amped now, militates against the development of a spiritual life.
100%.
Right. And so one question I have for you, John, I think there are different kinds of mystical encounters or mystical experiences, and we're not specifically speaking about those, but I am curious to know, have you had a profound, clear mystical or encounter with the living Christ at some point in your life? So,
Ian, I'm not sure what people are going to do with this.
Please go for it.
But I want to say almost daily. Almost daily. Because I sought it. Because I crave it. Because I adore him. And want not only to experience him, but also the fullness of his kingdom. Right? You get God and the entire unseen realm. You get the kingdom, everybody. When Hebrews urges us, for example, come boldly before the throne of grace so that you may find mercy and help in time of need. I don't think most people understand that's a literal invitation. Come over to my house. Like, the throne of grace is a real thing, people. And you can actually go there and receive help.
Yeah. So what do you do if someone says this to you? Because I think this is the majority of people, at times myself, that people have lost touch with desire and with longing. And apart from which, it's difficult to feel motivated to do what you're describing, that there's a kind of inner dullness that people experience spiritually.
Yes.
So there almost is a step before this, right? Which is, how do we make space to once again get in touch with that? We were saying in a previous Sehnsucht, as Lewis would have talked about, right? To get in touch again with that inextinguishable longing for the unnameable. So how do we How do we do that so that people are then motivated to go barnstorming in and go, God,
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
more?
Well, Ian, let me first ask you, why do you think that dullness is there?
Well, I do think that it has probably been fundamentally true of human beings in general forever, on one level, because I think about, if I were to describe what spirituality is, I'd probably borrow Anthony de Mello's quote that, spirituality is waking up, right? Awake, O Israel. I think it's about waking up
Yes.
to the presence of the grace that is brimming in all things. Right. So that's how I understand it. And by the way, whenever I talk like this, evangelicals look at me like a confused Labrador retriever. They all go like this. And they're all like, you know what I'm saying? They all look at me like, you're a little crazy, aren't you?
I know. Hang with us.
Same thing with like, the Shema, hear, O Israel.
Yes.
Yeah. Hear this.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to tell those dear folks who are freaking out, hang with us. Hang with us. This is actually in the Bible. Okay. Okay. So I think, yes, Ian, I think the dullness has always been there. But however, the crushing nature of the current moment,
Yes,
the pace, simply the pace of life that most people are required to live at now, to get from work to carpool to dance lessons to music, get their kids to soccer, and the pace of life is utterly mad. It's madness. Okay, so people are pretty much strung out by the pace, but then there is the inundation of content, the inundation of media.
yes,
you take in enough media every week, folks, to crash a laptop, like literally, like. And so we are awash in content, and we are deeply empty within because of the pace of life. That can't help but dull the human soul, and it dulls your capacity to experience God, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's interesting. I was recently speaking at a conference, and I was opening the first plenary, and I was talking about the contemporary milieu in which we find ourselves. And I quoted C.S. Lewis, where he, in the Screwtape Letters, where the older devil is training up this younger one, right? And I'm just going to read you this quote because I think it just feathers beautifully with what you're saying. He says, "Music and silence, how I detest them both. How thankful we should be that ever since our Father entered hell, no square inch of infernal space and no moment of infernal time has been surrendered to either of those abominable forces, but all has been occupied by noise. Noise, the audible expression of all that is exultant, ruthless, and virile. We have already made great strides in the direction of making the whole universe a noise in the end. The melodies and silences of heaven will be shouted down. But I admit we are not loud enough yet. Research is in progress."
That was because the internet hadn't been built yet.
That's exactly right. This was 1942.
And the smartphone, right? Those two things. Yeah, because it's always with you.
It makes me think of the scripture in Kings where the wind and the earthquake and the fire, that's the internet and the content, like just constantly coming to us, but it's in the whisper.
Come on.
And so you have to make the space, you have to linger, you have to sit with it. I would say, even like you're talking about the worship before, I think about it when I'm sitting on the river, to sit enough to be still, to hear the water, whatever it might be.
Yes.
But Anthony, most contemporary churches are noise machines. You go to your typical evangelical non-denominational church. You walk in, there's music playing on the speakers. You can't even be silent before the service.
I've actually been told. I was guesting at a church. It was a mega church, and in between songs, I stopped and I started another song, and it was intentional. And after the first service, before the second service, the producer told me, "Listen, like you need to keep a pad has to be going. Like you can't have silence."
Look at John. People can't see John, but John has his hands on his head. He's freaking out. John is reaching for the Xanax. He's having trouble coping.
I was like, well, that silence was intentional.
Well, if you walk into most successful, large churches of that nature, there are earplugs at the door. Everyone's got a bucket of earplugs, right? Because the noise is so intense, right? So again, folks, I just want to, I have a very pastoral heart. I just want to offer these little things that are going to help you along. Begin to practice stillness. Mm-hmm. And I mean, honestly, people, I literally mean 60 seconds. That's probably all you're going to be able to do right now, okay? Yeah. Couple minutes where you just put on noise canceling headphones or go in the bathroom and close the door if that's the only quiet place in the house, and just let your soul do nothing.
That's good.
Nothing.
You know, the one practice that has meant a lot to me. So I'm sure you've read Martin Laird's Into the Silent Land.
No.
Oh, it's so good. You're welcome. Into the Silent Land. There's a second book he wrote called Ocean of Light. Oh. And first of all, you will love having them on your bookshelf, John, because they're beautifully designed books. He was a professor. Yeah. He's a Catholic priest, was a professor at Villanova. I can't remember where he is now. And he's a brilliant writer. You just love the writing, right? And so he encourages this practice. It's kind of like centering prayer, right? But it's a 20-minute daily sit of sitting in silence. And the way he would put it is lovingly gazing into the eyes that are lovingly gazing back at you.
Right. Which is a little beyond most people's experiences.
Yes.
So we built something. I don't know if you're aware of this. We built something called the Pause app. It's free, everybody. It's on the App Store. It's called the 1 Minute Pause. And it offers you a variety of those guided experiences. Lovely music, very soft voice, a scripture, a simple prayer, the Pause app. There's a variety of pauses on there. We call it the 1 Minute Pause because I knew I could only ask people to pause for 60 seconds in this world. Which, can we say, it's just like, that's like insane, everybody. That's insane. But my team's like, you need to add a 5-minute and you add a 10-minute pause. And I told the team, I said, look, no, you don't understand. People will not pause for 10 minutes in this world. Well, much to my shock, that's the second most used pause. There's a whole palette of experiences there. It's called the 1 Minute Pause, everybody. It's free. You can get it at the App Store. And it is so lovely because what we're talking about, Ian, is we're talking about retraining our humanity to experience what is already right there, which is the love of God, the presence of God, the help of the angels, right? Like all that's right there.
Yes. So I want to remind everybody, we're speaking with our new friend, John Eldridge, author of the book, Experience Jesus Really, Finding Refuge, Strength, and Wonder Through Everyday Encounters with God. John, correct me if you think I'm a heretic, but a word I use a lot in the spiritual life, and our folks will know this because they've heard me talk about this before. I feel like so much of what followers of Jesus find themselves in their early days of faith is really a project of reformation, not transformation.
Go on.
So they are, by virtue of their unaided will, attempting to achieve or acquire union with God through being good. And actually what they just end up becoming is respectable religious folks, right? Like they just don't swear as much, they don't drink as much, they just become respectable, but they don't actually have this experience of union that you're describing, right? Yeah. It's this sort of straining toward relationship with God through practices, going to church, sharing the faith with their friends, giving money to World Vision or whatever. All nice things, all good things, but not necessarily the thing, right? So for me, so much of the journey has been letting go, it's a strange thing to say, even as I say it aloud, of overprivileging effort and simply learning to give God consent to do in me what I cannot do for myself, which is namely change, right? Or to experience him. What role does effort play in this thing that you're describing? Or is it a gift? Or is it both?
Again, guys, come on. This is like a 3-hour question.
Sorry.
Yeah. I want to say, let's see. Okay. So first off, I love the word consent. That's a really good word, because what we are doing when we give God our consent, we are coming into alignment with him and his intentions for us. You have my yes. You have my yes. Yeah, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. And that'll change. I mean, guys, that'll change your life. That'll change your career. That will change your marriage if you give God consent to your inner life. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I like that very much. But you asked about effort as well. Like, where is consent and effort? Where is resting and where is pushing deeper? The thing about the spiritual disciplines, which I believe in them, I practice them. The thing is, most of the spiritual disciplines could be practiced by an agnostic or an atheist. Silence, solitude, generosity, fasting, that sort of thing. But what we're looking for is for the soul to be inhabited at a greater and greater measure by the loving presence of Jesus. Okay? As the beautiful Leanne Payne used to say over and over again, she would say, the soul is healed through union with Christ. Okay? That's huge for a trauma-riddled culture, by the way. I mean, the world is just traumatized. The soul is healed through union with Christ. So what I would say is, if the effort is bringing you into union, that's a good effort. If the effort is simply exhausting you, right, drop it like a hot potato.
So give me some alternatives. I have some I could think of. And in fact, I'm going to do one that is going to make you so happy. All right. One of my disciplines for experiencing Christ is reading poetry.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a pretty regular practice of reading. I'm not reading like English romantics. I'm not like reading William Blake. That's a little bit over my pay grade. But certainly Rilke, right? Or reading Tennyson, or for me, what happens when I do that is their language, to quote Dickinson, comes in at me slant, and suddenly I have an encounter where I go,
yes.
"Oh, you just said clearly what I always felt vaguely."
Yes.
And it's like, to use that emoji, sorry, boom, I have this head explosion, right? And my heart begins to kind of rise up and sing. And that's actually better for me than I got to pick up the Bible and read all of Galatians today.
Yes, right. Yes, because beauty, by the way, beauty heals the soul.
Yes.
And the more beauty you can take in a trauma-laden world, folks, I'm just going to recommend get as much beauty in your life as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Art, music, poetry, get flowers in the house. And then, like Anthony was saying, get out on the river. Get into nature. Nature heals the soul. Your soul is designed to live in a garden. Okay, so nature heals, beauty heals. You are asking for a couple of simple examples. We are withdrawn. You called it numbness, but I would also call, there's something about the soul that, like a sea anemone, when we experience pain, disappointment, or honestly, noise, like just constant noise, like a sea anemone, the soul pulls in. We close up.
Yes.
Okay, we close up. I just literally sat here just an hour ago with a pastor, lovely man, but it was only in the last 10 minutes of our conversation, like I felt his closed soul was beginning to open up a little bit. Okay. Well, beauty opens the soul, rest opens the soul, joy opens the soul, play opens the soul. You want the shortcut, you want the simplest thing. It is love Jesus. Like 1 minute, it's a simple practice of, I love you. I love you, God. I love you, Father. I love you, Jesus. I love you, Holy Spirit. Because loving God opens the sea anemone back up then for his indwelling, right? It gets you out of that clenched, anxious, tense place that most of us wind up in at some point in our day. And it reopens the soul. It's the simplest thing in the world to do.
I love this, John. I just want to circle back to this just more broadly. We began with the early thoughts about technology addiction, doom scrolling, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, right? Of course, we know that all of these companies have a nefarious agenda, which is to actually draw you in more and more and more and more. Now, it seems to me, to speak more broadly about the problem of addiction, I think that addiction is in human hardwiring, number one.
Yes.
And also, what we're facing now is catastrophic problems with addiction. And it's not just drugs and alcohol, though it's those. It's also sex, it's porn, it's food, it's shopping, it's spending, it's debt, it's gambling, it's this, it's that. It's like never, as a friend of mine likes to say, if you don't think you have an addiction, well, first of all, you're deluded. Second of all, he's like, you're just one click away from whatever addiction it is that you want, right? Now, attachments and addictions, these have long been conversations in the Christian tradition, but these things seem to me to be particularly good at providing us with facsimiles of an experience of God, which is what the heart is looking for in addictions, right? And they're also great at preventing us from having an experience with God. Can you just riff with me for a moment about the role of addictions in the spiritual life beyond just including technology, but beyond, and how it's what's in play there, and how do we find disentanglement from it?
Gosh, again, 4-hour question. So this is a very, very beautiful conversation, by the way. I'm enjoying it immensely.
Oh, good.
Okay, so the soul is made for ecstasy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the enemy knows that and is trying to entrap your soul in counterfeits. Okay? Yes. Okay. So you've got to bring the kingdom of darkness into play here. It's not just, all you addicted people, you should stop all that. The enemy knows your heartache. He knows your story. He knows your trauma. And he knows what will work with you. That he will present, because initially what we're starting out with, gang, we're starting out at the level of comfort. Just give me some comfort, man. Like a bag of donuts, 2 hours of Netflix. Just get off my case. Just give me some comfort. Okay. But then, right, then the comfort then becomes compulsion, and you need more, and you go deeper into, and then there you are, you're trapped. So I'm going to connect two things back together, because you asked a very important question a while ago about desire.
Yes.
We didn't linger there. The recovery of desire. What's Paul's phrase? He said, having lost all sensitivity, they have given themselves over to sensuality. Okay. The more that you actually recover your heart's desires, the less you are going to be fooled by the counterfeits. And so the recovery of desire is actually the road, not only out of addiction, but it is the road to God. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, so that's desire, but I wanted to hook it up to this current thing about, so comfort. Folks, where are you going for comfort? What is your consolation? What's your daily consolation? Because if you don't have it, we're not saying, hey, knock it off. You shouldn't be comforted. We're saying, I wish a rain of comfort upon you. I wish an ocean of comfort for you to dive into. God offers that. He actually offers that. And the more that we get just a taste of it, you will be in the position like the disciples where they go, where are we going to go? You alone have life, right? The soul is in search of life. God is the wellspring of life. The more that you can taste his comfort, taste his ecstasy, taste the folks, this isn't going to be hard. You're going to become the most spiritual person in your neighborhood because you just found the source of life.
So interesting, John. So I've been in recovery from alcohol and drug addiction, and I'm going to say something so strange. My history of addiction has been the very best thing that ever happened to me on my spiritual path.
Right.
It turned out to be something that was heinous at its worst, when I'm having convulsions in hotel rooms, right? Seizures.
Yeah.
To something incredibly, it became this magical invitation from God to a depth of intimacy with him that I previously didn't know existed, right? And I think about Carl Jung, who is, by the way, the sort of anonymous founder of AA. And Jung once said in a letter to Bill W., he said that what addicts are looking for is spiritus through spiritum. So looking for the spirit through spirits. And he referred to them as frustrated mystics.
That's it.
Is that not amazing?
That's it. That's it. Yes. Yeah. And so folks, this is really a very kind approach to understanding what your soul is craving. Because most people are living with an enormous amount of shame around their addictions. And compulsions and fears and anxieties and just the general lack of well-being in their soul. They live with a lot of condemnation around it, actually. But then to say, oh, no. Like, of course you're looking for comfort. Mm-hmm. Of course you're looking for solace. Of course you're looking for love. Of course you are. Right? You are designed for life. Let's go find it.
Yes. So you reminded me of a story a friend of mine tells. He was in treatment, and this guy had a bad heroin addiction. And if you had heard his childhood story, it is so full of trauma. It's just when one tragedy ends, the next one starts, right?
Yeah.
And his counselor came in, and she heard his story, and she looked at him and she said, "Oh, son," she was Irish. She's like, "Oh, son, thank God you found heroin. But now."
Yes.
It could only take you so far, dear.
Yes.
And now we have to have, and this is Bill W., right? A spiritual awakening of sufficient force that it renders the need for an external solution to an internal problem unnecessary.
Yes. Right.
That's it. Taste and see.
Yeah.
Yes, taste and see. Yeah.
Taste and
Everybody, John Eldridge, experience Jesus really. Finding refuge, strength, and wonder through everyday encounters with God. John, I'm just realizing we've had you on for an hour already, and I feel like, holy smokes, we got so much more ground to cover. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Holy smokes. So I didn't get to cover everything on my little list of things I wanted to talk about, but tell me, just in a nutshell, right? You're talking to a beleaguered person in the world, and they're wandering around. They're trying to make sense of their life, and what they really want is an experience of Christ at their core. And you can just give a précis of what the core message of the book is, I suppose. But what is to put it in your words, your pastoral word to them? What's the benediction you want to give them?
Yes. Oh, my goodness. You are deeply loved. You are completely seen. Your story is known and understood. And what Christ's invitation is, I stand at the door and knock. If you will open the door, I will come in. Okay? He's knocking through your pain. He's knocking through your addiction. He's knocking through your anxiety disorder. Open the door of your soul to Jesus. And it looks practically as this. You're stuck in traffic. You're raging again. Jesus, come into my rage. Your anxiety is starting to amp up again. Jesus, come into the center of my anxiety. I love you here, in the center of my rage, in the center of my anxiety. You are opening the inner door of your hurt and heartache
Yes.
to Christ.
Yeah, and that's the consent.
Yep.
That's the moment of consent.
Yep.
And to me, and again, it may be that I have an overly robust, even I think sometimes I have an overly robust theology of grace, right? But I'm always like, it's so simple, we make it hard. It's just not that hard. Well, let me just put it this way. It's simple, it's not easy, but it's so simple, right? It is a matter, as you said, I love what you just said or the way that you said it, which is to articulate yes, to say yes.
Yep.
And all kinds of kooky things happen when you do that, as you said, right?
That's right.
Lots of things will change the more often you do that.
Yes.
Some stuff's going to change, kids.
Can
John,
I just say
again,
something really
yeah,
quickly
please, Anthony.
on that? Because it came to mind when you were saying that little practice earlier, John. It can be so simple. And for me, it wasn't I love you, I love you, I love you. It was you love me, you love me, you love me.
Yes.
And sometimes it was also just yes.
Yes, that's good.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, I think it's, the words don't always matter, but if you, whatever it is that tunes your heart into that affectionate place, right? And focus.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Love that.
John, thank you so much for being on Typology.
Oh,
what a joy.
This has been a delight. I've got new books I'm going to go get. And thank you.
Man, so good. And listen, everybody, please go out and get a copy of John's book, Experience Jesus, Really Finding look at this. I took my notes over the name of the book, so I can't even read it anymore. But the title is Experience Jesus, Really, subtitle to be determined when you buy it. Yeah. And John, again, thanks for being with us. And may all of you have love. May you have joy. May you have peace. May you have healing. May you have rest. Until next time.